With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories. SVG Finance Minister highlights food security and economic challenges in the region amid global trade tensions. CARICOM foreign ministers convened in Bastia amid a shifting global landscape. SVG Finance Minister refutes rumors of ECCB governorship bid amid regional controversy. Adriana Young's family reject one-person investigation help. News source Guyana reports. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell welcomes Trinidad and Tobago's interest in hydrocarbon cooperation with Grenada. Grenada Broadcasting Network has that story. Internationally, India-Pakistan ceasefire. Trump says India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire. Now, the details. While some countries are enjoying a reduction in imposed tariffs for not retaliating to the U.S. tariff imposition in early April, St. Kitts and Nevis and the wider Caribbean still have to contend with the original 10% tariff. The US and UK recently reached a trade deal, and as of May 10, 2025, the US and China have met in Geneva to discuss the whopping 125% tariff on Chinese goods to the US and China's retaliation. The implications of this for trade are mounting, as China is a major supplier of goods to much of the world. At the end of April, at the close of the recent IMF World Bank Group spring meetings, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez addressed pressing matters concerning trade relations with the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECCU, with a particular focus on food security and looming economic headwinds. Minister Gonzalez, in an interview with journalist German Abel, emphasized the significance of the discussions with the International Monetary Fund regarding the revised global economic forecasts, especially in light of evolving U.S. policy measures and their predicted consequences on the Caribbean region.
Very useful discussion, as usual, with the International Monetary Fund, particularly dealing with the revised forecast that the fund has produced in their recent World Economic Output in light of the policy shifts in the United States and how those shifts in policy and the revised forecast are predicted to impact the Caribbean region.
Pointing out the nature of Caribbean economics, Minister Gonzalez noted,
a lot of the countries in the Caribbean are not massive exporters to the United States. They are goods exporters. Our economies are increasingly evolving towards services. However, the United States still remains the dominant point of contact for our imports, not only of American goods, but goods from Latin America, goods from Europe, goods from further afield.
The finance minister highlighted the intricate logistics surrounding imports that involve goods from various regions, including Mexican fruits and vegetables, Brazilian and Argentinian beef, and European products, all typically routed through Miami. He warned of the potential inflationary impact a tariff imposed on these goods before they reach Caribbean shores could have.
And if a tariff is slapped on all of those products before they're unshipped to the Caribbean, it will have an inflationary impact. Will have a negative impact on growth.
Minister Gonzalez stressed the urgency for enhanced regional cooperation and infrastructure improvements to mitigate such challenges, advocating for accelerated regional integration and improved intra-Caribbean trade.
One of the things that we have to do better as a region is accelerate regional integration, improve trade between and among our islands, and revise the logistical arrangements of how goods get into our region.
He echoed similar sentiments as the ECCB Governor Timothy Antoine and pointed to alternative ports such as those in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Dominican Republic, beyond CARICOM's traditional supply lines through Miami as potential gateways to bypass U.S. tariffs.
These are important things that we have to analyze urgently.
Minister Gonzalez acknowledged the active efforts of multiple countries when questioned about ongoing engagements with U.S. trade officials.
Individual countries are meeting with U.S. trade officials. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has a meeting. I just spoke to other countries in the room that have meetings scheduled with various U.S. trade officials. So we are making repeated démarches.
He further revealed that the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, will soon have a separate round of talks with U.S. foreign affairs and trade officials to advocate for the region's interests while acknowledging the challenges ahead.
But we are cognizant of the headwinds that we're facing in this regard.
Turning to concerns over a potential U.S. recession and its impact on the tourism-dependent economies of the Caribbean, Minister Gonzalez cited the IMF's World Economic Outlook, noting a marked rise in the estimated likelihood of a global recession.
The IMF's latest document, the World Economic Outlook, has now increased the likelihood of recession, global recession, from about 25% to about 40%. Which means that the likelihood of recession is increasing.
The minister detailed the vulnerability of countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis which rely heavily on the U.S. tourism, highlighting the strong correlation between U.S. economic contractions and regional downturns.
It is true to say that St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the other tourism-dependent countries are heavily reliant on U.S. tourism, and that there is a strong correlation between recessions in the U.S. and negative impacts in the region. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if there's a 1% decline, inflation of 1% in the United States has a direct impact on our tourism of about 0.5%. And so we're very, very concerned about it.
To address this dependency, Minister Gonzalez outlined efforts to diversify the tourism market and broaden economic activities.
What we're trying to do is to expand our tourism base, try to get tourists from outside of the U.S. region to diversify. 50% of our tourists currently come from the U.S. We're trying to make that less heavily dependent. And of course, we're trying to grow our economy through other fields as well to make our economy more resilient to the ultimate declines. The cyclical movement in tourism activity.
Minister Gonzalez underscores a region poised to navigate these headwinds through regional solidarity and strategic diversification as the Caribbean braces for a challenging economic landscape shaped by global shifts and tariff implications. The 28th meeting of the Council of Foreign and Community Relations, COFCOR, commenced its opening ceremony on May 8, 2025 in Bastille St. Kitts, drawing foreign ministers and dignitaries from across the Caribbean community, CARICOM. The two-day gathering centered on addressing pressing regional issues and forging stronger diplomatic ties amid a rapidly evolving international environment. The Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, Minister of Foreign Affairs et al. For St. Kitts and Nevis and newly appointed Chair of CARICOM's Council for Foreign and Community Relations, in remarks at the ceremony underscored the challenges facing the region and broader global community.
Secretary General and colleague ministers, I am confident that our discussions today and tomorrow can only be enhanced by the backdrop of the natural beauty of our twin island federation that we are so very pleased to share with you. Yet, this environment of calm and beauty that surrounds us belies a shifting and troubled geopolitical and economic landscape where the rules-based international order is now being eroded by the attempts of some to undermine multilateralism, and of course the rule of law.
Highlighting the erosion of once sacrosanct partnerships and inalienable principles, Dr. Douglas expressed the urgent need for a realignment of priorities for many of our countries, especially as the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and various armed conflicts continue to permeate the global economy.
These circumstances, they constitute an inflection point for this, our Caribbean region. They demand a unity of vision and mission to weather the tide and to identify and implement innovative approaches to achieving regional and national development goals.
The minister emphasized the significance of broadening CARICOM's partnerships beyond traditional allies.
In this vein, the continued bolstering of our efforts to deepen relations with non-traditional partners, even while we continue to engage fully with our own traditional development partners, is very critical.
Drawing attention to recent developments, he noted that several new partnerships were pursued in 2024 and this year, anticipating the upcoming CARICOM Africa Summit in September as a pivotal event that
will afford our member states the opportunity to build on the recent advances in our own diplomatic and economic relations with our brothers and sisters on the African continent.
Over the 2 days of deliberations, ministers were expected to consider engagement with potential partners from regions as near as Mexico and as far as the Philippines. Dr. Douglas pointed out that these engagements
will provide yet again a framework to carefully contemplate and strategize around how we may seize the opportunities that the current political milieu has presented to us for diversifying our partners and the nature of our own partnerships.
He did not shy away from addressing ongoing regional disputes and crises.
We will also continue to take stock of unacceptable developments in Haiti, the unsettling Guyana-Venezuela border controversy, and yet the Belize-Guatemala dispute.
These issues remain high on CARICOM's agenda as member states seek coordinated and constructive approaches. Additionally, the agenda includes upcoming multilateral meetings through which ministers aim
to begin consideration of our joint interests and coordinated positions on global issues.
Key priorities discussed included renewing global commitment to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in a timely manner and contributing to the new vision for preventing and controlling non-communicable diseases, which require careful regional advocacy and stakeholder engagement. The importance of such discussions was further underlined by the reference to the third Global Sustainable Island Summit set to take place later in May in St. Kitts and Nevis. This critical platform will advance regional sustainability efforts, underscoring its significance. Turning to CARICOM's future orientation, Dr. Douglas urged the ministers to contribute robustly to deliberations concerning the
Dominican Republic's application for associate membership of CARICOM and the paper that will be presented on general CARICOM enlargement. These considerations, I emphasize, they are critical for the future of our CARICOM.
The Haitian crisis, however, loomed large as a central and urgent challenge, underscoring the gravity of the situation.
But the future of CARICOM could not be seen in a positive light without delving more deeply into the Haitian crisis. We need to come out of this meeting with some practical solutions.
Dr. Douglas stressed, calling for a collective call to action. In closing, he extended gratitude and recognition to the outgoing chair of COFCOR, the Honorable Vince Henderson, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Dominica, for his exemplary leadership during a critical period marked by global and regional upheavals. The ceremony also welcomed a new member to the Council from Trinidad and Tobago, who joined virtually following that country's recent general election victory. Moreover, Dr. Douglas congratulated the Honorable Albert Ramden on his election as Secretary General of the Organization of the American States, expressing confidence that Ramden would continue to lend his wisdom and guidance to the Council. Emphasizing the imperative nature of the current international context, Dr. Douglas remarked,
"The international context in which we currently operate, it demands a more creative and adroit approach to diplomacy. We can no longer operate on the premise of business as usual."
The 28th COFCOR meeting ends with high expectations for active participation as ministers explore new and innovative ways to harness CARICOM's unity and strength in service to the people of the Caribbean. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Finance Minister, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez, has firmly denied circulating claims that he intends to seek the position of Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB. The denial comes amid heated regional discussions following concerns from St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister, the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, about the costly mansion being constructed for the ECCB governor in St. Kitts. Addressing the swirling rumors in an interview with journalist Jermaine Abel, Minister Gonzalez described the suggestions linking him to a future ECCB governorship as mischievous, emphasizing that such insinuations unfairly politicize a legitimate matter. He stated unequivocally,
There is no chance of that, and that I believe is a mischievous perspective by people who are trying to politicize a legitimate issue that has been raised by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines about expenditure at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. I think it is mischievous. I think it's also insulting to suggest that a country can't raise an issue legitimately unless there's some ulterior motive that somebody wants to post. I'm not qualified to be the governor of the central bank, and I have no interest in the post.
This declaration comes after Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez publicly expressed grave concerns over the EC $22 million expenditure for a new official residence for the ECCB governor. The mansion project in St. Kitts has sparked widespread regional debate on financial prudence and governance amid ongoing economic challenges faced by Eastern Caribbean territories. In response to these mounting concerns, Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Gaston Brown, the current chair of the ECCB's Monetary Council, intervened to address the controversy. Prime Minister Brown has categorically denied any mismanagement or misuse of central bank funds connected to the Mansion project. He refuted implications suggesting Governor Timothy Antoine acted extravagantly during the building's development. The chairman described the situation as requiring calm and responsible scrutiny rather than unwarranted allegations, underscoring the need for transparency and proper governance without casting aspersions on individuals. The ECCB Monetary Council, chaired annually by the finance ministers from its member states on a rotational alphabetical basis, oversees significant regional financial decisions. Camilo Gonzalez, Minister of Finance for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is a current member of the Council, but has clarified that aspirations for the ECCB governorship are neither imminent nor planned. In regional news, Adriana Young's family reject one-person investigation help. News source Guyana reports.
The move by the government to secure the services of one independent homicide investigator from Canada to assist with a probe into the death of 11-year-old Adriana Young has not received the support of the dead girl's family. And that's according to their lead attorney, Dexter Todd. In an interview with News Source, Mr. Todd said the government has fallen short in meeting the demands of the family and its repeated call for Adriana's death to be investigated by the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Scotland Yard of the UK, or the Royal Mounted Police of Canada. Todd said assistance from Canadian homicide expert Leonard McCoshen, a retired member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, will not suffice.
They're not satisfied. They're not in support of that gesture at all. To have a retired person, fair enough, comes with some form of experience. Their main concern here is that this individual is not going to be accountable to any particular body. What they were looking forward for is to have an organization or an institution in which it's active, in which the members can be accountable. All right? So in this stage where you take a private investigator, then the private investigator has to be accountable only to whomever is his paymaster.
The attorney said while he would not want to cast aspirations on the integrity of the Canadian homicide expert, Adriana's family desires an international investigative organization to conduct a probe. He said only then will the family be assured that the investigation will be done at a higher standard.
Because of how this entire case is being handled, there are concerns. And with those concerns, the satisfaction is not there with the family in relation to this single person who is coming, who has been retired, who was retired, and is not connected to any particular body or organization in which we can look at their own code of conduct, their terms, etc., and to be able to say, well, okay, we're going to hold this institution to those standards.
Mr. Todd said there is still time for the government to seek assistance from a reputable investigative body to conduct the investigations. Adriana Young went missing on Wednesday, the 23rd of April, while visiting the Doubleday Hotel with her family. She was found dead in the hotel's pool the following day, triggering widespread protests. An autopsy concluded on her remains by 3 international pathologists found that she died by drowning. According to a preliminary report released by the Guyana Police Force, there was no evidence of sexual assault of the child, nor any fractures or injuries to her body, and she died by drowning. That report has not yet been handed over to the legal team, but Adriana's family is adamant that her death was no accident. The family is awaiting both the preliminary report as well as the full report of the post-mortem examination, so that the report could be reviewed by the forensic experts.
Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell welcomes Trinidad and Tobago's interest in hydrocarbon cooperation with Grenada. Grenada Broadcasting Network has that story.
Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell warmly welcomes the initiative by the newly elected Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, to deepen and strengthen cooperation between the two countries in hydrocarbon exploration and development. In an official response issued to the Grenada Broadcasting Network on Thursday, Prime Minister Mitchell stated, quote, "Given Trinidad's long history and reputation as one of the world's oldest oil-producing nations and the strong cultural and economic ties between our two countries, we have always been of the view that Grenada stands to benefit from cooperation with Trinidad in this field. We also recognize that in the present international economic environment, Trinidad too stands to benefit from cooperation with Grenada in this field." End quote. His response follows an announcement on Saturday by Persad-Bissessar, who revealed plans to dispatch newly appointed Energy Minister Dr. Rudal Amunilal to Grenada to explore opportunities for energy cooperation.
But I have a surprise for you. I intend to send my Minister of Energy to Grenada because I'm being told that Grenada offshore has more gas and oil than the Dragon Field. So shall we explore that?
On Tuesday, an update from The Guardian in Trinidad and Tobago said Dr. Munilal is waiting to receive the relevant historic documentation before initiating a discussion with the Grenada government to move the idea forward. According to the report, Dr. Munilal was expected to meet with the chief executive officers from Trinidad's state energy sector on Wednesday, and based on the findings reported in the meeting, his ministry will then make direct contact with counterparts at the Ministries of Energy or Mineral Resources in Grenada, Guyana, and Suriname. The Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago has highlighted that natural gas was discovered in 2017 in the Nutmeg Well, located in waters between Trinidad and Grenada. However, it noted that little information has been released about the find since then. Further, the chamber emphasized that if developed, the field could present significant economic benefits for Trinidad and Tobago. Meanwhile, former Energy Minister of Trinidad, Stuart Young, has cautioned the government against entering into new gas agreements with regional countries, including Grenada. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Telesford.
We now bring you these international reports.
Pakistan's foreign minister has confirmed a ceasefire with India following days of tensions and cross-border attacks. Ishaq Dar has posted on X, and this is what he said. Pakistan and India have agreed to a ceasefire with immediate effect. Pakistan has always strived for peace and security in the region without compromising on its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Let's cross now to Kamal Haider, who joins us from the Pakistani capital of Islamabad. So, Kamal, people were getting more and more concerned about the escalation that was ongoing here, but now we seem to have some resolution.
Absolutely, a major breakthrough that no one anticipated. And the events of the past few weeks kept everybody on the edge, given the fact that after the Pahalgam attack, India had threatened massive reprisal. They then decided to have incursions into Pakistan. They attacked 9 places in Pakistan with several casualties there, but it didn't stop there. After that, suicide drones were hovering all over Pakistan. They did not cause much casualties, but that was a grave violation and a provocation. The Pakistani military then said it would respond. People were waiting to see when that response would come. And then when the Indians decided to attack several Pakistani military bases early morning today, Pakistan decided to go with an immediate response, a massive response. And that, of course, got everybody worried. The US Secretary of State called Pakistani military chief. He also called the Indian foreign minister, and they wanted a quick de-escalation of this conflict. Now, it must be remembered that whatever happened will have deep implications for Narendra Modi's political future, and also the fact that the world must take notice of the fact that this particular simmering conflict over Kashmir has to be brought to an end, some sort of a solution. Otherwise, the two countries may be back to square one in the future. So indeed, a breakthrough, a sigh of relief from people across the world, and of course from the region, both in India and Pakistan, that this has now finally come to an end.
Right, and as you say, Kamal, it may stop it for the time being, but the situation and the issue is still very, very present. And the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is saying that both governments, India and Pakistani governments, have agreed to start talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral site, presumably focusing on this issue of Kashmir.
Yes, it's not just Kashmir. It should be remembered that after the attack in Pahalgam on those tourists, India decided to suspend the water treaty and threatened to cut off water supplies to Pakistan. That suspension was an existential threat to Pakistan, given the fact that 80% of this country survives on the Indus Basin waters. It is an agricultural country, the backbone of the economy, and therefore it was an existential threat. So those issues have to be resolved as well. Both sides have to cooperate, both sides have to give and take, and both sides have to now de-escalate and hope that this ceasefire will last and that this jingoism and the saber rattling that led to this conflict will finally be over. But how long? We will be hoping that both sides will now be able to sit down, talk seriously, and try to de-escalate, even so that there are no incidents like this in the future.
Indeed. In terms of the territorial dispute, it's not something that can be quickly resolved by any means, is it?
Definitely not, but one must understand that after India revoked Article 370, took away the autonomy status from Kashmir, this is after all an international dispute. There are relevant United Nations resolutions on this. So one has to take into account the fact that Indian forces have also been accused of atrocities against the people of Kashmir. There is great resentment there. This is the only majority Muslim population of India in that particular area. So India and Pakistan must now find a political solution. There has to be climbing down from that high pedestal and to seriously address this issue, because as I mentioned, otherwise they'll be back to square one. There will be another attack, maybe carried out by non-state actors. The most important thing to understand here is that if there is a terrorist attack, the first thing you do is to investigate who did it. You don't go to war. You don't cross international borders. You don't use fighter bombers and drones and artillery duels to shoot at each other. So at least for now, sanity has prevailed and people will be hoping that both sides are able to keep to that agreement of holding the ceasefire.
And Kamal, what do we know about that attack that initiated all this?
But you see, what happened is that in Pahalgam, which is over 100 kilometers away from the line of control, are unknown gunmen, and they're still at large. They have not been apprehended, opened fire on innocent Indian tourists, including families. There was a massacre, and then those people, within 5 minutes of that, Indian television stations started shouting and accusing Pakistan. The Indian government also held Pakistan responsible. Narendra Modi also accused Pakistan of a flagrant violation, accused Pakistan and warned of dire consequences. So the important thing here is to see whether those people will be apprehended, because let's not forget, the people of Kashmir have a lot of resentment against what the Indian military is doing over there. And those resentment obviously leads to extreme acts. So one has to get to the bottom of this, who carried out this attack, why, and also to find solutions so that this doesn't happen in the future.
It was built to land on the least habitable planet in our solar system. Instead, it's been falling back to Earth for over 50 years. Probe 671 was one of nearly 30 missions the Soviet Union sent to explore Venus. It launched in 1972, during the heyday of space exploration.
It got as far as orbiting the Earth in a low parking orbit, and the upper stage fired to send it out into orbit towards Venus. And halfway through that rocket burn, the rocket sputtered out.
It was relabeled Cosmos 482, a ball of forgotten space junk. But not to all. Government space agencies and a growing group of hobby astronomers have been watching it and trying to prove its unique origin story ever since.
Really what's changed is that amateurs have much better capabilities now that sort of rival what the governments used to be able to do. And so we can get independent public information on what's going on.
65 years into the space age, those Russian missions to Venus remain the only ones that ever reached the planet's surface. They sent back photographs and even the sound of its hot, toxic wind. Scientists say it's time to go back. Europe and China will launch Venus probes within the next 5 years. The U.S. space agency NASA will too, if threats of budget cuts don't halt the project. But surprisingly, if all goes well, a private company called Rocket Labs will get there first, as soon as next year. Venus holds clues to life back on Earth. Our two worlds are similar, but runaway climate change ravaged our neighbor long ago. And though the claims have been challenged, some astronomers saw traces of gases in its poisonous atmosphere that they say could be produced by simple life forms.
We're trying to revisit the cloud particles. Far above the scorching surface, way above, at 50 kilometers above the surface, it's actually the right temperature for life. And at that altitude, there are clouds, lots of thick clouds that are always there, permanently covering the entire planet. And those clouds are made of liquid droplets. And so that's what we think is very interesting.
A crash landing of a time capsule from one age of discovery at the horizon of another. Colin Baker, Al Jazeera.
Donald Trump's administration is aiming to bring the first group of white South Africans to the United States via its refugee program as soon as next week. 3 people familiar with the matter have said. It's a divisive move.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Especially given that Trump has been blocking refugee admissions from the rest of the world. 2 of the sources, who requested anonymity as they were sharing internal plans, said their aim is to fly the initial cohort of around 50 Afrikaners into Washington Dulles International Airport in Virginia.
It was like an answered prayer.
Life coach Katia Beeden is administrator of a website that seeks to help white South Africans take up Trump's offer.
We've been forgotten. It's very hard for us to travel. It's very hard for us to get visas. So to suddenly hear that a country like the United States is offering us refugee status was a really big deal. And I was so excited. I felt so relieved. It just felt like a lifeline.
In February, Trump issued an executive order that called for the US to resettle Afrikaner refugees. It said Afrikaners, who are descendants of mostly Dutch early settlers, were victims of unjust racial discrimination. The assertion that minority white South Africans face discrimination from the black majority has spread in far-right circles for years and been echoed by Trump's white South African-born ally, Elon Musk.
I guess the key issue just to highlight is that none of this is actually true.
Political analyst TK Poe says the refugee scheme has created a false narrative that South Africa is a country going through some civil war.
And then secondly, within the internal borders of South Africa, it really has created a lot of division. It's almost as though President Trump has gone out of his way to sow internal divisions.
Violence against white farmers and a law allowing for the expropriation and redistribution of land are often cited as evidence of anti-white discrimination in South Africa. However, out of 26,000 murders in South Africa last year, just 44 were linked to farming communities, according to police statistics. Crime researchers say the overwhelming majority of murder victims are black. In addition, 3/4 of private land in South Africa is white-owned and not a single expropriation has taken place. South Africa's government has criticised Trump's program, saying that it fails to recognise South Africa's history of colonialism and apartheid. It added that it's ironic that refugee status is being offered to people from the most economically privileged part of South African society. The average white household owns 20 times the wealth of the average black household, according to international academic journal The Review of Political Economy. Official data shows unemployment rates are far higher among black citizens.
As long as it's not here, you can go anywhere you want.
Trump's order also came after he'd suspended all US refugee admissions, citing security and cost concerns. Thousands of Afghans, Congolese and others fleeing conflicts were blocked even after they'd been vetted and cleared.
What Biden did to this country.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: SVG Finance Minister highlights food security and economic challenges in the region amid global trade tensions. CARICOM foreign ministers convened in Bastia amid a shifting global landscape. SVG Finance Minister refutes rumors of ECCB governorship bid amid regional controversy. Adriana Young's family reject one-person investigation help. News source Guyana reports. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell welcomes Trinidad and Tobago's interest in hydrocarbon cooperation with Grenada. Grenada Broadcasting Network has that story. Internationally, India-Pakistan ceasefire. Trump says India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire. Thank you for listening.